Good evening, my cherished friends. Tonight I want to share with you what might be the most practical yet revolutionary principle I have ever discovered about manifestation. It's a concept so simple that you'll understand it immediately, yet so powerful that it will transform every desire you've ever held and every dream you've ever dared to dream. Imagine for a moment that you're standing outside a magnificent mansion, looking through the windows at the beautiful life happening inside. You can see the elegant furnishings, the warmth of the fireplace, the joy of the family gathered around the dinner table. You admire it, you want it, you think about how wonderful it would be to live there, but you remain outside, separated by the glass, observing someone else's life. Now imagine instead that you're sitting in that very mansion, feeling the warmth of the fire on your skin, tasting the delicious meal, laughing with your loved ones around that same table. You're not thinking about the beautiful life, you're living it from the inside. This, my friends, is the difference between thinking about your desires and thinking from your desires. And tonight I'm going to show you that this distinction isn't just poetic. It's the very mechanism by which consciousness creates reality. There's a secret hidden in the way successful people naturally think, a pattern that unsuccessful people consistently miss. It's not what they think about, it's where they think from. Tonight I'm going to reveal this secret and show you how to shift from thinking about your desires to thinking from your desires, a shift that will collapse time, eliminate struggle, and make manifestation as natural as breathing. The revelation that changed my understanding forever came through observing a remarkable woman who seemed to manifest everything she desired with effortless ease. While others struggled and strained to attract their good, she simply lived as if all her dreams were already fulfilled. When I asked her the secret of her success, she said something that initially puzzled me, but later revolutionized my entire approach to teaching consciousness. She said, "Neville, I don't think about being wealthy. I think from wealth. I don't think about being loved. I think from love. I don't think about being successful. I think from success. Most people exhaust themselves thinking about what they want. I rest in thinking from what I am." At first, this seemed like mere wordplay. But as I pondered her statement, I began to understand the profound difference between these two orientations of mind. When you think about something, you position yourself as separate from it, observing it from a distance. When you think from something, you position yourself as one with it, experiencing it from the inside. Let me illustrate this with a simple example. When you think about being in Paris, you imagine yourself there from your current location. You see pictures of the Eiffel Tower. You plan your trip, you anticipate the experience. But when you think from being in Paris, you feel the cobblestones beneath your feet. You smell the cafe aromas. You hear the French conversations around you. You're not imagining Paris. You're experiencing Paris from within Paris. This distinction, thinking about versus thinking from, is the difference between wanting and having, between hoping and knowing, between seeking and finding. After my conversation with this wise woman, I began to observe how people approached their desires. I noticed that those who struggled with manifestation were consistently thinking about their goals, analyzing them, planning for them, working toward them, but always from the position of not having them. Meanwhile, those who manifested easily were thinking from their fulfilled desires, making decisions from that consciousness, feeling from that reality, living from that assumption. A young man came to see me who had been unsuccessfully trying to manifest financial abundance for 2 years. He said, "Neville, I think about money constantly. I think about how much I need, how I could earn it, what I would do with it, how different my life would be if I had it. But the more I think about money, the more absent it seems to become." I said to him, "You have just identified the source of your struggle. You are thinking about money from the consciousness of not having money. But consciousness cannot create what it is thinking about. It can only create what it is thinking from. You must learn to think from abundance rather than about abundance." "But how can I think from having money when I clearly don't have it?" he asked. I explained money is not paper and coins. Money is a state of consciousness. Abundance is not a bank balance. Abundance is a way of being. When you think from abundance, you make decisions as an abundant person would make them. You feel as an abundant person would feel. You assume as an abundant person would assume. The external money becomes a natural expression of the internal abundance. I taught this young man to shift his entire mental orientation. Instead of thinking about money from the consciousness of lack, he learned to think from money, to think as money would think if money were conscious. I said to him, when you wake up tomorrow morning, I want you to feel the deep security that comes from knowing your bills are easily paid. Feel the calm confidence of someone whose bank account never causes anxiety. When you walk into a store, feel the freedom of someone who can buy what they truly desire without checking the price. When making decisions, ask yourself, what would someone with abundant resources choose here? Don't think about having money. Inhabit the emotional state of someone for whom money flows naturally and consistently. He began to feel abundant before he had the external evidence. Instead of feeling stressed about bills, he practiced feeling the relief of someone whose finances were handled. Instead of feeling restricted by his budget, he practiced feeling the expansiveness of someone with financial freedom. Instead of making decisions from financial fear, he began making decisions from financial confidence. The change was remarkable. Within months, opportunities began appearing that he had never seen before. Business ventures that had been struggling suddenly flourished. People began offering him financial partnerships and investment opportunities. His external reality shifted to match his internal shift from thinking about abundance to thinking from abundance. But this principle extends far beyond financial manifestation. It applies to every area of life: health, relationships, career, creativity, spiritual development. The question is always the same. Are you thinking about your desire or thinking from your desire? Let me share with you the story of a woman who had been battling illness for years. She came to me exhausted from fighting her condition. Neville, she said, I think about being healthy all the time. I research treatments. I visualize my body healing. I affirm my wellness, but I still feel sick. What am I doing wrong? I observed that while she was thinking about health, she was thinking about it from the consciousness of sickness. Her thoughts about health were actually reinforcing her identity as a sick person who wanted to be well. Instead of thinking about health, I suggested, begin thinking from health. I want you to wake up each morning and feel the vitality coursing through your body, not as hope for the future, but as present reality. Feel the strength in your muscles, the clarity in your mind, the energy that wants to express through movement and activity. When you eat, taste your food with the appreciation of someone whose body processes nutrition perfectly. When you exercise, feel the joy of a body that loves to move and is naturally strong. When making health decisions, ask yourself, what would someone in perfect health naturally choose? Don't monitor your symptoms from sickness. Experience your body from wellness. This woman learned to inhabit the consciousness of perfect health. Instead of checking how she felt each morning with the anxiety of someone who expected problems, she began feeling into her body with the gratitude of someone experiencing vitality. Instead of eating foods while worried about their effects, she began enjoying meals with the confidence of someone whose body thrived. Instead of resting from exhaustion, she began resting from satisfaction with a body that worked beautifully. The transformation was profound. Not only did her physical condition improve dramatically, but her entire relationship with her body changed. She stopped experiencing herself as someone fighting illness and began experiencing herself as someone expressing health. The healing felt natural rather than miraculous because she was thinking from health rather than about health. This brings us to one of the most crucial distinctions in all of consciousness work: the difference between the consciousness that seeks and the consciousness that finds, the consciousness that wants and the consciousness that has, the consciousness that becomes and the consciousness that is. When you think about your desires, you automatically position yourself in the consciousness of seeking, wanting, and becoming. When you think from your desires, you automatically position yourself in the consciousness of finding, having, and being. Most people spend their entire lives thinking about what they want, from the consciousness of not having it. They think about love from loneliness, about success from failure, about health from sickness, about abundance from lack. Then they wonder why their thinking doesn't produce the results they seek. But consciousness cannot transcend itself through thinking. A consciousness of lack cannot think its way into abundance. A consciousness of loneliness cannot think its way into love. A consciousness of sickness cannot think its way into health. You must shift the consciousness from which you think. I remember a businessman who had been struggling to grow his company for years. He said, "Neville, I think about success constantly. I study successful companies. I read business books. I analyze market trends, but my business remains stuck. I can't understand why all this thinking about success isn't creating success." I said to him, "You are thinking about success from the consciousness of struggle. But success cannot be thought into existence from struggle. It can only be expressed from the consciousness that already embodies success." I taught this man to shift from thinking about his business succeeding to thinking from his business being successful. Tomorrow morning, I said, I want you to walk into your office feeling the quiet confidence of a leader whose company is thriving. Feel the satisfaction of someone whose vision is already manifesting beautifully. When employees approach you with problems, receive them with the calm assurance of someone who knows that solutions flow naturally through successful enterprises. When making strategic decisions, feel into the wisdom of someone who has already built what you're building. Instead of hoping your next quarter will be profitable, feel the deep knowing of someone whose success is already established. Instead of analyzing why his company wasn't growing from a consciousness of struggle, he began to make decisions from the consciousness of a leader whose company was naturally expanding. Instead of studying other successful businesses from the outside, he began to think as the successful businessman he already was in consciousness. When challenges arose, instead of feeling overwhelmed, he felt the calm resourcefulness of someone for whom problems were simply opportunities for creative solutions. The shift was immediate and dramatic. His decision-making became more confident and strategic. His leadership style naturally evolved. His vision for the company expanded. And as his consciousness shifted, his business reality shifted to match within 18 months. His company had achieved the success he had been thinking about for years. This principle also reveals why so many people struggle with relationships. They think about love from loneliness, about partnership from separation, about connection from isolation. They spend their mental energy analyzing why they don't have love instead of experiencing the love they are. A wonderful example of this came through a woman who had been single for many years. She said, "Neville, I think about my ideal relationship constantly. I imagine the perfect partner. I visualize romantic scenarios. I affirm that love is coming to me. But I remain alone. Why isn't my thinking about love creating love in my life?" I explained to her that thinking about love from loneliness actually reinforces loneliness. Instead of thinking about being loved, I suggested begin thinking from being loved. Tomorrow I want you to wake up with the warm glow of someone who knows she is cherished beyond measure. Feel the gentle smile that comes from knowing you are someone's greatest treasure. When you move through your day, carry the graceful confidence of a woman who has never doubted her worth because she feels it reflected in loving eyes. When you meet new people, greet them with the open warmth of someone who has love to give because she is already so full of love. When making choices about your evening or weekend, ask yourself, what would a deeply beloved woman naturally choose to do? Feel the security, the joy, the natural radiance of someone whose heart is completely fulfilled. This woman learned to inhabit the consciousness of being deeply loved. Instead of going to social events hoping to meet someone, she attended them with the contentment of someone whose heart was already full. Instead of analyzing every interaction for signs of romantic potential, she simply enjoyed connecting with people from a place of abundance rather than need. The results were beautiful. Within months, she met a man who was also thinking from love rather than about love. Their connection was natural and immediate because both were operating from the consciousness of love rather than the consciousness of seeking love. But perhaps the most profound application of this principle is in the area of spiritual development and self-realization. Most seekers spend years thinking about enlightenment, about consciousness, about their spiritual goals. But enlightenment cannot be achieved by thinking about it. It can only be recognized by thinking from it. This is why Jesus said, "I and my Father are one." He wasn't thinking about being divine, he was thinking from divinity. He wasn't seeking God, he was expressing God. He wasn't becoming spiritual, he was being spirit. When you think about your spiritual nature, you reinforce the illusion of separation between yourself and the divine. When you think from your spiritual nature, you recognize the truth of your eternal oneness with all that is. I knew a man who had been a spiritual seeker for decades, studying every teaching, attending every workshop, seeking every experience that promised enlightenment. He came to me frustrated and exhausted. "Neville," he said, "I've been thinking about God, consciousness, and truth for 30 years. I've analyzed every scripture, meditated for thousands of hours, and practiced every technique, but I still feel separate from the divine. What am I missing?" I said to him, "You are thinking about God from the consciousness of separation. But God cannot be found through thinking. God can only be expressed through being. Stop thinking about your divine nature and start thinking from divinity." This man learned to shift from seeking the divine to expressing the divine. Instead of thinking about consciousness, he began thinking as consciousness. Instead of trying to become spiritual, he began being the spirit he had always been. The transformation was immediate and lasting. He stopped seeking and started being. He stopped questioning and started knowing. He stopped trying to become enlightened and started expressing the enlightenment he had always been. Now you might wonder, how do you make this shift from thinking about to thinking from? How do you inhabit a consciousness you don't yet feel you possess? The secret lies in understanding that consciousness is not something you acquire, it's something you recognize. You don't need to become abundant to think from abundance. You need to recognize the abundance you already are. You don't need to become healthy to think from health. You need to acknowledge the perfect health that is your true nature. Every state of consciousness already exists within you. Your job is not to create these states, but to choose which state to think from. When you choose to think from love, you activate the love consciousness that has always been within you. When you choose to think from success, you activate the success consciousness that is your birthright. The practice is simple but requires consistency. Throughout your day, catch yourself thinking about your desires and consciously shift to thinking from them. When you notice yourself thinking about having money, shift to thinking from having money. When you catch yourself thinking about being healthy, shift to thinking from being healthy. Feel the difference in your energy, your emotions, your entire sense of self. Notice how thinking from your desires feels natural, peaceful, and empowering, while thinking about your desires feels effortful, anxious, and draining. But remember, this is not a mental technique. It's a recognition of truth. You are not pretending to be something you're not. You are remembering something you've always been. You are not creating a false identity. You are uncovering your true identity. When you think from love, you're not pretending to be loving. You're expressing the love you are. When you think from abundance, you're not faking prosperity. You're revealing the abundance that is your nature. When you think from health, you're not denying illness. You're affirming the wholeness that is your essence. So tonight I invite you to examine your mental habits. Notice where you've been thinking about your desires instead of from them. Observe how this creates a sense of separation between yourself and your good. Then begin to practice the art of thinking from. Choose one desire that is important to you and spend the next week thinking from its fulfillment rather than about its achievement. Notice how this shifts your energy, your actions, and your experience. Remember, consciousness cannot create what it thinks about, it can only express what it thinks from. You are not here to think your way to your desires. You are here to recognize that you are already what you desire. Think from love, and love expresses through you. Think from abundance, and abundance flows as you. Think from health, and health radiates from you. Think from success, and success becomes your natural expression. The secret is not in thinking harder about what you want. It's in thinking from what you are. Stop thinking about your dreams and start thinking from your dreams. Stop thinking about your potential and start thinking from your reality. You are not becoming what you desire. You are recognizing what you have always been. Think from this truth, and watch as your entire world transforms to reflect the consciousness you truly are. Thank you, and good evening. As always, thank you for joining me on this journey into the depths of consciousness. Remember, you are not here by accident. You are here because your soul is ready for this truth. Take these teachings and let them transform not just your mind, but your entire reality. Until we meet again in consciousness, keep assuming your greatness and living from the end of your desires. This is Best of Lectures. I will see you in the next video.